Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that is a bit, I want to say, divisive. We're going to talk about the education industrial complex. Because yes, it's an industrial complex. We keep saying, and I said that myself for a long time, that the education system was broken, right? It's failing. And we used to have a Head Start program, and then we had a No Child Left Behind program. And all in all, it seems like we're losing ground on that front. But then I started to look into it a bit more, especially when I was making fun of some of the teachings or some of the classes that are available. And anyway, I digress there. But I really don't think it's broken. I don't think it's failing either. And for that, you need to explore where it comes from. The education system we have now was born from the Industrial Revolution. And it was inspired by it, and it runs very much like an industrial process. You have batches of kids that come in when they turn 6, 5 potentially, and they exit when they turn 17, 18, at least high school. We're not talking about higher education just yet. And they get stamped with a batch number. They get a certificate that says that that's their batch number. It's almost like getting a serial number in a factory. And what this certificate, with its year of issuance, says is that you have met a certain requirement of knowledge, or at least you have passed a certain proficiency of knowledge, to be acceptable in whatever certain jobs or certain aspects of the economy might be. Not unlike an industrial process. Now, when we trace it back to 50s, 60s, and 70s, you can actually start to see the budgets being cut and the tapering of the quality of the education system, at least across North America. I don't know about the rest of the world and their modernized education system. I think Sweden and Finland and possibly Norway have really good stuff. I'm pretty sure Denmark is doing well, but at least in North America, you can see the peak of it probably in the early 70s. And then, budget cuts started ratcheting, and you started seeing overcrowding or just crowding in classrooms. And we're reaching peaks of now like 35 or 40 students per teacher in a year, which is quite high. I think when I was in school, it was 28. But really, when we look at this, we're thinking lack of funding, need more teachers, need to pay teachers more. And that's probably never going to happen, unfortunately. The reason for this is that the education system, the public education system, and to a degree the private one as well, depending on how high up you go, but definitely K through 12, is meant to produce cogs for the machine. And so while it's doing that, it runs pretty much like a sausage factory. And let's talk about like Maple Leaf Foods. You have a machine that makes hot dogs. I'm sorry if I'm comparing your kids to hot dogs. That's not the point I'm trying to make, but the machine needs to make as many hot dogs per hour as possible without breaking down and without sacrificing quality below a point of acceptable quality. And the acceptable quality is we need people that can function in society, take up jobs and responsibilities to keep the economy rolling, keep paying taxes, and keep participating in the GDP. That's it. They don't necessarily need to be critical thinkers. Some of them will naturally become scientists and engineers, and yes, our education system will introduce them to biology, chemistry, physics, and all sorts of sciences. It won't necessarily make them scientists. It'll introduce them to what exists, and if they want to pursue that, they have the right aptitude and attitude, then they may well become, physicists and work for NASA. For the rest, though, for the overwhelming majority, they're just going to become 9-to-5 drone workers, which is okay. That's what we need in North America. That's the bulk of the necessity of jobs that churn the economy. So the education industrial complex, from our point of view, is failing. From the point of view of whoever is administrating it, and I can't say for sure that they're evil or failing at it, but I think it's doing exactly what it's intended to do. Produce people that can take jobs. That's it. And it does that. With that measure, it does it very successfully. Again, if we trace it back to its history, it was very hard to take a peasant or an average person who is illiterate, innumerate, and then give them a factory job doing something extremely complex with a machine they've never seen, who now uses thousands of pounds of pressure potentially from whatever steam device or hydraulic device, and then start explaining to them metallurgy, welding, and all these things. If you don't if you're not literate and you're not numerate, it means somebody has to verbally teach you and show you everything because you can't read text. So that's extremely unscalable. And then if you're not numerate, then any calculation derived, beyond the pull of a lever or the push of something is past your comprehension. So how much of a supply of any part, think of Henry Ford's assembly line, supplies of steering wheels or tires would be beyond your calculation or comprehension. So I think the education system did quite well. I think it's running in its efficiency cycle. So we built it, it was expensive, and now we're finding out, just like any other industrial complex, how much can we trim to make it as efficient as possible? How much of a skeleton crew can it run to make it as efficient as possible? Once we found that number, we're going to probably stick to it just like any good old factory does. Now, that rant being said, I find that the one thing that is extremely deficient in this education system is the financial education that we give our kids. So, the one thing this education system really does fail at, and it doesn't really fail, there's just a giant gap I find, is when it comes to financial education. At least personally, and some of the people who might know me may poke fun that I was skipping classes and eventually dropped out. I did go back and finish, but maybe I wasn't there. But I'm pretty sure of the classes that I was skipping, there was no financial education. So of the basics that I got, it was you earn money, you pay taxes, you buy stuff. Basically, the last standing value in North America of consumerism, buy. And it talked a little bit about credit, mostly credit cards. Got a small business type of, entrepreneurship cycle. Wasn't a whole lot there. But beyond that, there was really no education around finances and how to earn money with money and how to manage your personal money, etc. There was really nothing in there. At best, you were told, go talk to a professional, right? Go talk to a financial planner, which is where I'd like to impart on the parents of young kids, outside of homeschooling, which is potentially an alternative, but I don't know. There's a responsibility that falls on you to, one, educate yourself, and two, educate your children as they grow up in how money is used beyond just buying stuff that you want to have, because children are self-gratifying and that's what they understand. If I want to buy a GI Joe or a Hot Wheels, or I know those are dated, they might not even exist anymore, but whatever a kid wants today, whatever they want to buy, they got to understand that that's a trade for what else that money could do for them, and it needs to be articulated that way. The dangers of debt or credit and overextending on credit and how that might tax them later. Not to mention that the debt acquired for potential education, especially in the US. In Canada, it's not as bad, but in the US, you might be looking at $250,000 worth of student loans to get a fairly average degree that you're going to struggle to pay off until you're 50 or 60 at this point, I think. So making those decisions, some of them are type 1 decisions like education. You're choosing a career very early. I think that's one of the big flaws of the education system, because at 17, you can't be trusted to do many decisions, and somehow you're supposed to pick your long-lasting life career. I think that's one of the biggest flaws of the schooling system. And I think parents, unfortunately, have delegated much of the parenting role to the schools. Like, they do that at school, we're good. And it's not taking place, at least not well. So I think that's a gap on parents to make up. And I know this isn't so much about investing, it's kind of tangential to investing, but your kids' education and your kids' ability to learn and how much knowledge you give them will really shape their head start, ironically. So get them books, read books yourself, teach them tricks, teach them what it means to save 10% of everything you earn and make it grow. Teach them old lessons from like the book Richest Man in Babylon. If you're looking to grow your money by buying jewelry, don't use a bricklayer to broker the deal. Go into things you or whoever your partners are have high degrees of expertise. You don't need to be super smart about it. You don't need to be overqualified about it, but you need to be intelligent and smart, at the very least street smart about it. So that's my rant on the education industrial complex. I don't think it's broken, and I don't think it's going to get fixed. It is producing cogs for the machine, and it's your job as a parent or just as a person, to make yourself better, to not be forced to be a cog until, well, you either retire in poverty or die at the assembly line.